And so I'm here today with my good friend and repeat visitor to the show,
Yeah.
John Fazio Jr., or as I like to call him, the Faz. Kind of
Sure.
like the Fonz, but cooler for all you kids who know what the Fonz is. Some people are probably watching this going, the Fonz, what's a Fonz? Do you know what the Fonz is? You're not
No, I
young.
would
You're
say
not
that
too young
I
for
don't
that.
know how young your audience is, but I would assume that most of your
Most
audience
should know.
understands who the Fonz was.
Right on. So this is our Thanksgiving special. It's the Friday after Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you, John. Hope you
Yeah,
had
you too. Thanks for
hope
having me.
you had a safe celebration, probably solo celebration. You already told me that privately.
Yeah, I stayed safe. I just stayed at home.
Yeah, us
Had a
too. We
turkey
had
dinner. What's up?
just a small Thanksgiving here with us, just immediate family, no guests. Sad, but good. It's hopefully next year we'll be out of this and back with our families and friends. So, John, today I wanted to talk to you. You were on last time, and we kind of covered a lot of ground and
Yep.
and a lot of introduction. I'm not going to introduce you this time. I think people can go back and I'll give you a little bit of an introduction. John Fazio from Zorus Incorporated, and also John has tons and tons of sales experience. Used to be a trainer for Sandler Training. And you're welcome to elaborate on that a little bit. But I wanted to talk about objections today. The question, really get to. I think getting people to tell the truth is like one of the hardest things in the world. It's even, forget about objections for a minute. Like, let's think about how people answer questions, whether they're in the beginning of the sales process or at the end when they say no to your service or when they later quit. Becoming somebody quits your service and they go, well, thank you. We've been a client for a while and we're not going to be a client anymore because of whatever. And 9 times out of 10, it's not the truth. People lie. To start out with, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why the heck do people not tell the truth?
They used to tell the story of, when you were a kid and you went and you asked your mom for a cookie, and basically, mom turned around and said that, dinner's coming soon. You can't have the cookie, and that was sort of the immediate. You wanted something, you couldn't get it, and then you went up the next day and said the same thing. Can I have a cookie? And she's like, we're having dinner soon. And then it started changing where you didn't necessarily ask if you can have a cookie. The next question was, when's dinner, kind of thing. So I think from early on, we are sort of molded into, especially when somebody asks us a question, what the basis behind it is. And I think that we very quickly go to the answers that we just, have typically always had. I mean, on the sales side of it, though, it's a trust factor also. If I was having a conversation with you, as a friend, or I was having a conversation with, friend and family, you wouldn't be thinking about, well, what is the reason for that question? And should I, put something up there? Like, should I not tell them what the actual answer is? So there's absolutely a trust factor there in sales in general that, you have to sort of overcome in order to get somebody to be honest with you, which, kind of means that you have to build that trust in the beginning before you can expect them to, actually be honest with you and open up.
Yeah. And the people don't want to hurt other people's feelings either. There's an inherent thing there, right? Like, I think we're kind of hardwired to not want to necessarily tell somebody you've messed up, or you did this wrong, or you made me angry so many times and your service is terrible, or whatever, right? They just go, I'm talking, this could be during the sales process. I'm talking specifically about when somebody decides to not be your client anymore.
Mm-hmm.
How do you break through that kind of, in the questioning process? How do you get people to actually answer those tough questions honestly?
I think it's going to be a certain person that's going to speak up. It's kind of like that restaurant aspect of it where, you know, I don't know what the percentage of people that won't speak up when they have a bad, you know, time at a restaurant. They just won't go back to the restaurant.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is sort of that mentality where there's people that won't speak up and then just won't go back. I mean, I'm actually one of those people, like in general, like I understand the sales process, like, you know, understand sales in general, where you're constantly, like, even in a restaurant environment, like they're trying to sell you on the restaurant and the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it eventually gets to the point where you, I don't know. I mean, you take those things in, and then, I mean, as far as honesty and things like that, I think it's going to be a person that will come out there and say it. Now, everybody else, you kind of have to have this kind of open communication. And, you know, you may be able to kind of talk about this on the parenting side of it too, because, I mean, if you think about it, it's the same kind of thing where you have a parent and child, right? Where, you know, the parents could ask a child the question, and the child's not going to necessarily answer it, you know, exactly, because they don't exactly know what the thing is behind it. So, like, as a parent, I would assume that you try to just keep an open communication where, listen, anytime that you want to say something to me, whether it's good or bad, I just want to let you know that you can come to me and say it to me. And I think as salespeople, we should definitely let, you know, prospects know that too, where, listen, if this isn't the right thing, or if I say something wrong, or anything like that, you know, it kind of goes back to that upfront contract, where it's okay to say no to me. It's okay to say I did something wrong. It's okay to, you know, to yell at me. You know, it's perfectly fine in this relationship because, you know, I'm here for you, kind of thing. So, like, I think right in the beginning, when you establish that there is clearly that line of communication for them, it opens the door a little bit more. But I think majority of people are sort of in that, you know, kind of pool where they're just not going to say anything to you. They're just going to walk away, and you're just not, you know, you're never going to know because you didn't have that openness.
Right, right. I want to say hi to a couple people as take a breath here. Say hi to Randy Chaffee,
Hey, Randy.
who is going to be a guest on our show next week. He's a sales professional as well. Eric Bam. Hey, Eric. Eric was a guest last week on the show. So hello to all you guys listening, watching. And John, you know, you used to work at Sandler as a trainer. You did Sandler training for a long time. And you mentioned the upfront contract, which is a Sandler training principle. I want to talk a little bit about what that is and how that works. So let me kind of pass it on to you to talk about the upfront contract. I was going to ask you another question attached to that, but I'm going to actually put the brakes on that.
I mean, there is like an actual format as far as, you know, when they talk about something like an upfront contract, but I think the reality is, you know, it's just letting somebody know right up front, you know, what the agenda. So the way the physical, like the way that the Sandler upfront contract goes is basically you're checking things like time, and if there's other people that are going to be joining them, there's reasons for, you know, all the things that you're doing in the beginning. But one of the first things you're trying to do is establish what their agenda is. So what's the reason for them? What do they want to get out of this call? And then the second one is your agenda, which, again, for salespeople, there's sort of this, you know, mystification that I don't want to give you too much. You don't want to put my cards on, and you know, at the end of this demo, that's when we're going to do the sales part of it. Like there is sort of that game that people typically play. So when a salesperson come out and say, listen, at the end of this is what I'm going to ask you for. Like, I'm going to ask for either a sale, or I'm going to ask for this. This is what it's going to look like. And at the end of this, if you feel like this isn't something you want to do, tell me no. And it's perfectly fine. I mean, you know, I talk to people all day long. And if it doesn't work between us, I just want to let you know I'm cool with that. We can shake hands and walk away. And the idea behind the upfront contract is it's supposed to, you know, kind of take that wall down pretty quickly, where let's just throw it out on the table right in the beginning. One of the other examples that I make with an upfront contract, especially for salespeople, is fears that we typically have. To throw it out in the beginning, which, if you feel you're going into a meeting in a fear of something, fear that, you know, they're going to think of you as young or old or whatever it is, you throw that stuff right in the beginning and just talk about it, get past it. So this way, as a salesperson, like, you're not holding those fears. You're not, you know, anything that you thought about prior to it, you put it out on the table. So when you go into that kind of questioning mode, you're not holding anything back, which, you know, is essentially what an upfront contract is.
Right. Yeah. And I guess, you know, the thing of it is, you can't stress that it's going to work 100% of the time, because nothing's going to work. You're not going to sell 100% of the people. Right. Like, so it just is what it is. When you ask somebody something, and how much do you push? Like, because you kind of get a feeling when you're asking somebody a question, sometimes you can get a feeling that they're not necessarily telling you the truth, not that they're lying or even purposefully lying, right? Because they're sitting across the table as the buyer, and they know that we're playing a game, we're doing a dance, right? You are the salesperson, and my job is to not let you know the things that you need to hear to make a sale at the maximum amount of money, right? Like I may still want to buy from you as a buyer, but I want to get the best price, and I don't want to reveal too much because I don't want to give you ammunition to convince me to, throw all sorts of money at you, right? Like, how do you deal with that when you know that that's the case, and you're trying to walk gingerly over pushing too hard? How do you?
Yeah, there's sort of two things there. So first off, like, sales is supposed to be really qualifying. The salesperson is really supposed to be qualifying that person, whether the product or whatever they're selling is something that they want. Whether it be that they can actually, it's something that you're solving on their end. It's they can afford it. There's qualifications that you're doing there. But then one of the Sandler trainers kind of talks about these kind of 3 seconds of guts, which for a salesperson, if you're feeling something is weird in the conversation, if you're feeling that you're holding back on something, if you're feeling that there's something going on there, the thought pattern is that you're saying it where, it feels like you're holding back on something. What's going on? Like, let's talk about that. Typically, this is, when I start having this feeling, this is usually why. Or you're really just having this honesty with your prospect where, it's sort of unfortunate that we say this, where we're actually having honesty with your prospect, because, in the sales world, like, honesty is sort of that fine line, right? Because, salespeople just think that they're out there to sell or whatever. Like, if we actually look at it where I'm having a conversation with, another human being, and I'm just qualifying whether my product or service is something that they can utilize, need, and then at the end of the day, have a good experience with, like, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm literally just asking you some questions to qualify you. I mean, that's really where I think sales took a turn, is where people thought that they need to manipulate the conversation and hold things back and, like, be this, I don't know, this sinister salesperson that is, like, trying to suck on people and get all their money, when it should just be a simple conversation at the end of the day.
Can you share some kind of strategies for asking better questions? Because I think that's a lot of it comes down to asking the right questions in the right places. And I know this is a broad question. We can probably talk for hours on this, but one of the things that I've learned and I've seen over the years is that some people are just really good at asking really good questions, and some people are not really good at asking really good questions. So I guess the idea here is, or the question to start with is, how do you learn how to ask better questions?
I think the answer is how do you learn how to listen instead of talking? Because that's one of the biggest things about salespeople too, where, I have this in my mind where, like, when somebody's talking, typically my mind's usually moving, which is either thinking about what I can throw to the conversation, connecting it with something that I have going on, whatever it is. They're listening to that sound in the background, whatever it is. One of the biggest things that a salesperson can learn how to do is listen, which is actually pay attention to what they're saying to you and see where those things are. Because, as you said before, they may not in the first response or even the second response actually give you what the real answer is. But as a salesperson, if you're listening to it, if you're listening to the nuance, if you're listening to them saying something small and you're coming back and then you're using, exactly what they said and you're digging a little bit deeper, it's that listening aspect of it I think people miss, where the assumption is I'm supposed to, it's kind of the walk in there, spit up a bunch of information, sell you, this great thing and walk away. And the best salespeople are the ones that could just shut up and listen and pay attention to what they're saying. And that's where those organic questions are supposed to really come up. The best thing a salesperson can do is just be sort of inquisitive about that person in front of them. Have that just, I'm going to ask you a question just because you're a human being and you're in front of me, and, that's cool to learn about somebody. And those kind of organic things develop. But I think listening is a big problem with people in general, let alone salespeople.
Yeah. And, salespeople, I mean, obviously I know a lot of salespeople. Eric and Randy, who are on, commented before, are really, really good salespeople. they're really, and people, I think people in the sales field in general go into sales because they're really good at speaking, and they can talk well. They maybe talk a lot. And this is not to say that I'm not making fun of anybody. I make fun of myself. Sometimes I don't shut up, and you know, because I like talking. I like to, you know, that's why I got attracted to doing this in the first place, because I'm a social person. I like being around people. I like talking, right? Like I think everybody does. And I had to really discipline myself to learn how to shut up. And so what are some strategies for learning how to shut up? Because it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah. One of the things that stuck with me was, you know, one of the Sandler's philosophy is that you're a sales psychiatrist, which, you know, you think about that psychiatrist role, and that, you know, that really stuck with me because that's really what we're supposed to be doing. You know, you're going in there and you're asking questions to try to develop what the real story is. And that's how a psychiatrist typically does it. Is, you know, they're not coming in there and telling you, you know, how long they've been doing it, you know, psychiatry for. They're not telling you all the, you know, the patients that they've had. They're just sitting there and asking you questions. And that in itself is supposed to be where you gather that information from. So again, understanding your role is supposed to be gathering information. By you talking, you're not really gathering much information. Like one of the biggest things that they said was there's the 70-30 rule, which 70% of the time your prospect should be talking, which in a sense is, you know, sometimes not typical in, you know, a sales demo or a prospect to salesperson thing, but 70% of the time they should be talking to you. So you're really understanding that person.
Interesting. And you know, you've done a lot of training. I've been in some of your sessions and I've watched, and I've been in plenty of sales trainings with other people. And it's amazing how the trainer can teach that concept, like can literally say, you know, we're going to practice now some role playing, and you're just going to listen. And they literally, person is just immediately goes and starts talking. It's like you're watching them do it. And you're like, did you not just hear what they just told you? That's how hard it is.
You know, if you, I actually say this to, you know, the salespeople that I work with, which is like, go online and look up interview skills, which is basically what it is, interviewing, and go and look at the really good interviewers out there, which, you know, if you go, you know, news interviewers, like the really top interviewers, learn from them, because it goes back to these people, interviewers are typically same kind of thing. They have to break down the person a little bit in the beginning so that they can be honest with them throughout the interview itself. So it's very, you know, there's a direct correlation to just that, you know, understanding sales and then understanding that interview process, especially for news people, where these are high ranking, you know, presidents and things like that, that they're supposed to have a one-on-one conversation with. They very much have to put themselves in the same position as them. You know, you have to, like, if I'm working with a CEO of $1 billion company, like I'm clearly not a CEO of $1 billion company, but I need to put myself in the same line as you, so then we can communicate the same way. You know, again, it goes back to like the interviewer and the interviewee, we're on the same level here. So when I ask you a question, I want you to answer it, you know, with honesty. So I would say those kind of things is really where you should mimic. The really good interviewers, you know, would be great salespeople, because that's what they're able to do is open somebody up and actually get to the core, which is, you know, would be great.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And you know, I think sometimes when you watch these talk shows, like, you know, I think about, I watch like the Graham Norton show a lot on Facebook. I found it on Facebook, and I find him fascinating, but because he's so good, and he'll probably say it's the champagne if you're familiar with the show. On the show, I think alcohol tends to, maybe we should tell people to bring alcohol with them to sales presentations. It's easy.
I mean, it could definitely change some things.
But he's so great at asking amazing questions, and I like that advice. I you know, just being a host of a show like this, right? Like being online and bringing you on and interviewing you. I always wondered, like, am I asking the best questions? And anybody listening is welcome to tell me, hey, you should have asked a better question, or I wish you asked this here, because I'm always looking to improve my interviewing skills, because I think it's such a hard thing to do. I look at it like this in this format, what we're doing here, as well as selling, it's a chess match.
Yep.
And sometimes I feel like I'm playing checkers, and I'm sure other people feel that way. You know, instead of playing chess, you're playing checkers. And what I mean is you're making a move while thinking about the next move. Robin Cole asking about Graham Norton. Look up the Graham Norton show. Just do a Google search on the Graham Norton show. It's a British talk show, and I've found it on Facebook. And now, once you click on a video on Facebook, they show you everything. So all I see is a Graham Norton show episode.
Well, I'll throw in Sean Evans from Hot Ones. I don't know if you've seen Hot Ones, but
yeah, he's a great.
He's good. And I think that it goes back to the reason why he's so good is his research. So like, again, kind of as a salesperson, the beauty would be if you had some time to research them. And that's sort of social selling, where you're going on LinkedIn, you're seeing what school they went to, you know, you're having that kind of connection in the beginning where, oh, I saw that you're connected with this person. And, you know, those simple ways in the beginning to sort of break some things down. So like research is amazing because it gives you that much more to ask questions where if things die down and everything. I mean, you know, there's so many different correlations between sales and like even something as simple as dating. I mean, that's basically what it is. Like, right, you're on the first date, you're trying to come up with a conversation. If you did a little bit of research about, you know, the person that you were with, you may be able to say, hey, I saw that you went to this, or I saw that you went to this. Like, it's really that thing. It's that building trust, building a sort of relationship in a matter of minutes. You know, that's basically what it is, especially on something like a cold call. So there's an art to it.
And the date is a great analogy, because if you think about it as a date, and going back to what I was saying about playing chess and playing checkers, right? The checker player goes on a date and is immediately trying to get the other person to go back to home with them and sleep with them, right? Yeah. The chess player is making slow moves, right? You don't go from point A to point Z. You have to go from point A to point B and move down make those logical steps.
Yeah. And if you even think about that, you know, on a date, you're going to walk up to, you know, you're going to sit down on a date and you're going to start saying how great you are. You know, we've been around for this long and I have this and I have this and I have this. Like, just think about that. The other person's going to be like, they're purely not paying attention. Like, it's the same kind of thing on a sales call, where if you go in there and you just start talking about yourself in the beginning and how great you are and how great your product is, and like just sit there and spit up information, you have to think about the same kind of thing. The person on the other side of that table is like, who is this person? Like, why do I really care, kind of thing. So like, it's just kind of understanding that you're there to understand that person.
Right. I love that. Do you have any kind of, you know, you talked a little bit about social selling. That's great advice. I love that. I'd like to take it further, if we can, than the simple things, right? Like, it's easy to go out and do some research and find simple connections, but how do you dig deeper so that you can get them past just that kind of introductory point?
I mean, if you don't have the access to go get like information to find out about them,
I guess I'm not asking the question right, which, you know, we're talking about questioning and I'm not asking a good question. Shame on me. I hear, you know, I more than just, hey, we went to the same school. Like, how do you connect the dots between what you can find online and dig deeper, right? Like, I think some of that stuff is great foot in the door stuff. Like, oh, I see you, you know, you live in Minnesota. You know, I hear there's good this in Minnesota or something, you know, I think some part of it, you can make a mistake and almost like asking something that doesn't matter, right? Like, oh, how's the weather? It's cold in Minnesota. Like, you know,
you don't want to throw too much fluff in there. It really goes back to the listening aspect of it. You know, even in the simple questions that you're asking somebody, and we can even, you know, role play at this point, but it's listening to what they come back with. And, you know, you can kind of see or read in between the lines of what's important to them by the things that they're saying back to you. And like, going back to the original conversation that we had, the first, you know, episode about the personality styles. So like, kind of understanding something like personality styles will sort of help you understand, you know, where they may actually want to pay attention to. Like, if you catch somebody is, on that kind of D personality style. Like maybe they want to get right to the point and they don't want that fluff in the beginning. Like, I don't want to talk about the weather. Like, I want to get right to the point. And my situation is, how is this going to help us grow? Like, so you can sort of, direct the conversation in a way that if you understand a certain personality style, it will help you see what's going to perk them up. And it really just goes back to listening, asking a question and then listening to really how they're coming back, the tone, what they're saying, and then sort of read in between the lines of, is that important to you? Well, let's talk about that. Like one of the beauty that Sandler had is called the pain funnel, which is just a set of questions to try to get you down to, as we said, like try to get down to the real point of what the conversation is. And that could happen organically, again, by sort of seeing where they're having that conversation. Is it about growth? Is it about their people? Is it about, process? Like, what is the responses that they're giving to you? So then you can then, put that back to them so you can see whether that's what they care about. Right.
Okay. So you talked a lot about, you made some good analogies that I think are the idea of going and looking at good interviewers. That was great. Do you have any other resources that you recommend, like books or trainings? I know obviously Sandler training, but anything that you direct people to that help with questioning, help with getting people to ask, to this training on listening and all the things we kind of talked about?
Yeah, there's there's a lot of great videos on YouTube, interview skills, kind of learning, communication, things like that. And that consistent, having communication with people, I think what I would say the most that you can learn from is picking up the phone and talking to somebody. There's really, you can sit there and look at books as much as you want, and you could sit there and, look as much as you can, but it's actually getting out there and doing it. What was the question? So when you sense withdrawal, hesitation, the part of the prospect, what do you suggest? I suggest you say something. I'm feeling that there's some hesitation here. So let's talk about that. Like, again, it kind of goes back to like, it's a gutsy move from a salesperson to do that because the typical salesperson won't. So it's that kind of 5 seconds or 3 seconds of guts where you're going to ask a question that they may not have ever been asked before, which is like, is this really something that you want? If, you feel a little bit of hesitation. Was it something that I did? Salespeople can easily say that. Like it feels like there's something that I just said that didn't go the right way. So if you wouldn't mind, can we just talk about that before we move on? And that's a gutsy move, but that's how you break through.
Love it. Good stuff. Well, thanks, John, for that. Tell people how they can get in touch with you and what you're all about.
So jfazio@zorustech.com is the work email. It's John at John Fazio Jr. outside of that. I also do sales training on the side. I don't work for Sandler anymore, but I do one-on-one stuff. But so if you're interested in expanding the conversation, absolutely reach out. Zorus Tech is the company that I work for. We have some amazing security products specifically for MSPs. So we'd love an opportunity to, ask you some questions, try to figure you out and see if our product is something that may work for your end users.
Love it. And you are listening to the Elevating IT podcast. I would suggest you go over to auditforit.com/elevatingit if you want to get all those old episodes, all the past episodes that we're accumulating. We've got a bunch on there now. And follow us, subscribe to us on iTunes. John, last question I'm going to ask you, because we're really trying to, talk to a lot of sales experts and bring a lot of folks and different perspectives onto this show. You're in the channel, and you're a sales expert. You're not only are you a sales professional doing it, you're a sales trainer. So that adds a whole awesome layer on there. And I'm going to have you on again. I'm sure you're going to be a repeat customer for the show here.
Thank you.
Repeat guest. The question is, who else would you suggest I bring on? Do you have any suggestions of anybody that you think would be a good guest on this show?
That is a good question. There's a lot of, really good salespeople out there. When you look at something like LinkedIn, kind of going back to the social media aspect of it, I think a lot of MSPs, especially a lot of MSPs that I talk to, wish that they were doing more when it comes to things like social media and actually getting information out there. So, those people that are doing it, I think should be the ones that we're kind of highlighting. So I mean, I could probably throw you a few people, but there's, you know, when you go on LinkedIn, you see MSPs that are trying to put out information and resources to other MSPs, I think are just gold. And it kind of shows the people that are trying to help other MSPs. You know, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a MSP from South Africa on Monday of this week. Ended up coming in through the website, and you know, we're not set up to do anything in South Africa. But the conversation I had with him was, you know, do you talk to any other MSPs in the area? You know, do you guys have any kind of network? And he said, he's like, to be honest with you, no. He's like, we see the states where there is kind of that community and there's that channel. He's like, I really wish that it was the same kind of thing here, but it's sort of like, you know, it's everybody for themselves kind of thing. And I think that's a key thing on our end, as far as the channel being able to actually communicate with each other and be able to share resources and have things like this where you have other vendors, you know, other MSPs that are talking to each other. So like, I really think there's a huge benefit to those movers and shakers that are trying to put resources out there. I don't have anybody specific off the top of my head.
All right. Well, I'm gonna press you for that behind the scenes.
Okay.
Because I want to bring on, and they don't need to be in the channel, by the way. They don't need to be. Yeah. You know, I brought on Eric Bam last week, he sells these cool liners for pizza boxes that keep the crust crispy.
Oh, nice.
Like, so that when you get delivery, it's a really cool thing. And he's awesome, but he's not in the channel. He knows nothing about selling technology, but he added a ton of value. Taking that outside perspective, I think there's a lot of value in that, learning from people who are selling anything. So it doesn't have to be in the channel. So I'm going to press you on that. And that's my final question for everybody who's a guest on the show is bring me more guests. So
all right, we could do that.
But thanks for being on, John. I'm going to have you back on again because you're awesome. And I love chatting with you about this and learn so much when you're on here. So thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me for the Thanksgiving special too. I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
Right. It was really more to give Frank DiBenedetto, who is always with me on Friday at 2 p.m. when we do our live, we do what we call the weekly sales wrap. So I figured I'd give him the day off. So I switched you for that time slot. But yeah, this was a great Thanksgiving special.
Very cool.